Okay.
Sorry, what can I call you? BritSimon. So, because
You can call me
people call,
Simon.
yeah, many people call you Simon. That's why I ask. So
That's
Simon
right.
is easier for Farsi speaker.
No problem.
So yeah, so we'll start. My nickname is Mahsa, and I have this channel Radio GB. I'm just as I'm DV 22 winner. I just share my experience with people, and but lately I'm getting many questions, and the only source I really trust from the time I have been selected, the only person I could find and I get my answer correctly was you. So
Oh,
that's
thank
why I
you.
requested you to participate in this discussion. So I'm gonna first of all, can you shortly introduce yourself for like Iranian Afghan people that they are gonna watch this video?
Yeah. So I'm Simon, BritSimon. I've been um, talking about DV lottery since 2013, and I created my blog in 2013, 2014. And I did that because my wife won the DV lottery in DV 2014. And we moved to America in 2014 with my daughter. So I have a wife and a 13-year-old daughter now, and we live in Northern California. And I'm in software. I'm an enterprise architect for a large company here.
Okay, great.
That's what that.
Yes, that's great. So, okay, we start with most important question that I think it's Afghan situation because it's kind of emergencies that they need
Sure.
to know. First question, as you know, for the situation in Afghanistan, they are not able to obtain passport, the one that they don't have passport.
Right.
And many of them, their passport are expired, so they cannot apply, even if they can get a passport from this new, I don't know what it should I call them, like from Taliban. Is it's not. I don't think the world is going to accept
To
them as a
recognize.
yes, recognize them as a like
Yeah.
government. So they're going to be in trouble. And now the question is, many of them talk about this exemption in passport exemption. Can they use it? There are three options, as you know. The first option is. For stateless people. Second one is for people who are living in the country controlled by communists. And third one is another one you should have individual exemption. So
Right.
in this case, I want to ask you if they can use this or not. And just give me a second to translate it because actually I
Sure.
forgot even to translate your introduction. سلام بر دوستان عزیز فارسی زبان، خیلی خوشحالم که اینجا هستید. من امروز از بریسمون درخواست کردم که به تمام سوالای شما دوستان افغان و دوستان ایرانی در مورد لاتاری جواب بده. بریسمون ازش پرسیدم که خودش رو معرفی کنه برای کسایی که نمیشناسن. ایشون سال 2013 2014 به خاطر خانمشون که قبول شدن وارد آمریکا شدن و توی ایالت کالیفرنیا زندگی میکنن و از همون موقع فعال هستن برای اطلاع رسانی به دوستانی که توی لاتاری میخوان شرکت کنن یا اینکه قبول شدن. و الان اولین سوالی که بهش گفتم به نظر من بیایم با سوال دوستانی که افغان هستن شروع کنیم چون مهمتر وضعیتشون یه صورت به حالت اورژانسیه. اولین سوالم این بود که با توجه به شرایط جدید افغانستان این دوستان نمیتونن پاسپورت بگیرن. حتی اگر پاسپورت هم بگیرن معلوم نیست که آیا دنیا این دولت اینا رو به دولت رسمی به عنوان رسمی میشناسه یا نه. با این توجه به این یک شرایط یک گزینه توی فرم لاتاری هست به اسم معافیت پاسپورت که برای 3 نفر از 3 گروه هستن که از پاسپورت دادن معافن. یکیش بی‌وطن ها هستن، دومی کسایی که تحت تسلط کمونیست هستن و دولتشون و سومی هم کسایی هستن که معافیت شخصی از دولت آمریکا گرفتن که هیچ کدوم از این گزینه‌ها الان ظاهرا شامل شما افغان‌ها نمیشه. ولی ببینیم نظر سایمون چیه و به نظرش آیا میتونید از این گزینه‌ها استفاده کنید یا نه. So I translated from beginning till here. So tell me about these 3 exemptions.
Very
What do
good.
you think?
Yeah, Farsi is a beautiful language, by the way. It's lovely. Okay, so there are. I think we need to talk about a couple of different scenarios. One is, have you got a passport already, but it's expired? In that case, I would actually use the expired passport, and I would change the date of the expiry in order to make it look unexpired. And that is not a perfect answer. None of these are a perfect answer that I'm going to give you. But in that scenario, we have seen the government give Venezuelans, for example, a 5-year automatic extension on the validity of their passport past the expiration date. And so in that way, you would use an unexpired, it would appear to be an unexpired passport. So that might be the first type of solution. That's one solution that people could use if they want to. And I'll come to the second in a moment. Do you want to explain that one first?
Yes, of course. دوستان میگن که به نظرشون اول اینکه این کلا باید بیایم به چند دسته تقسیم کنیم. دوستانی که پاسپورت دارن و تاریخش تموم شده، اعتبارش تموم شده، میگه به نظرم اونهایی که پاسپورت دارن و این پاسپورت اعتبارش تموم شده بیان و از پاسپورتی که اعتبارش تموم شده استفاده کنن. و اگر شما تاریخ اعتبار تموم شده رو بزنید توی فرم از شما قبول نمیکنه. ولی میگه شما بیاین به تاریخو جوری بنویسید که انگار اعتبار داره، یعنی بزنیدش تا فردا، بزنیدش تا 10 روز دیگه. و دلیلش چیه؟ شاید به نظرتون این حرف غیر قانونی بیاد و اشتباه بیاد، ولی میگه چند سال پیش اتفاق افتاده که دولت آمریکا به ونزوئلا this Farsi is in Farsi به افرادی که مال ونزوئلا هستن این شانس رو داده، کسایی که تقریبا توی شرایط مشابهی با افغانستان، حالا متفاوتی با افغانستان گیر کردن، این که پاسپورتشون اعتبارش تموم شد ولی بهشون گفتن که تا 5 سال اشکال نداره. دولت آمریکا فرض بر این گذاشته که شما 5 سال پاسپورتتون اعتبار داره. این قضیه قبلا اتفاق افتاده. به نظر سایمون میگه که شما بیاین از این گزینه اگر پاسپورت دارید که اعتبارش تموم شده استفاده کنید، یعنی تاریخ پاسپورتتون رو یکم جلوتر نشون بدید که در صورتی که آمریکا اومد این گزینه رو برای شما استفاده کرد، اون موقع شما ثبت نام کرده باشید و شانس از دست نداده باشید. Okay.
Good. So the second solution, so that's one possible solution, and it's not perfect. It's going to create some conversation, some questions at interview time, but I think that would be one possible way. The other way is to pick one of those exemptions, right? Now, if you're going to pick one of the exemptions, then the one that makes the most sense to pick is the one that relates to a communist country. I would not say you're stateless because that's not true. That's actually for refugees. The third option, which is about an exemption that has been previously agreed, that doesn't exist. People don't have that exemption automatically pre-granted. And so although Afghanistan is not a communist country, it's a dysfunctional country, and that's how you could explain it. And so on balance, you could either go with the first solution that I said about, or you could use the middle of the 3 exemptions relating to a communist country.
اوکی. دوستان میگن که اون گزینه قبلی که بهتون گفتم که بیاین تاریخ پاسپورتتون رو بیارین جلوتر و کمی جلوتر بگین، مسلما این نیست که اوکی حل میشه و سریع راحت کارتون انجام میشه. مسلما بعد از قبولی به یه سری مشکلات یا یه سری بحثا و اینکه بخواید مثلا اینو ثابت کنین که چرا این کارو کردی، ببینیم آمریکا قبول میکنه نمیکنه، برمیخورید. بعد میگه یه گزینه دیگه هم دارین که بیاین از اون معافیت، اون 3 تا گزینه معافیت استفاده کنین. میگه به صورت قطع گزینه اول که برای استیتلس زده اصلا شامل حال شما نمیشه، یعنی همونی که میگه ما بی وطن هستیم. و گزینه آخرم که به صورت شخصی من معافیت گرفتم شما نمیتونید. میگه نزدیکترین گزینه به شما گزینه دومه که داره میگه افرادی که توی کشورهای زندگی میکنن که تحت تسلط کمونیسته. میگه درسته که افغانستان تحت تسلط کمونیسم نیست، ولی این نزدیکترین چیزی که به شرایط شما میشه مثال زد و بتونید اگر پاسپورت حتی اعتبار تمام شده ندارید گزینه دوم بزنید. اوکی؟
Good. So just to reiterate the point, neither solution is perfect. There will be a conversation, and the consular officer has some discretion over this. It's not an automatic disqualification. So if you win the lottery in this way, with either using the exemption or using an expired passport, your first thing will be to convince KCC that you did the best you could, and then KCC will never refuse a case. They don't have the power to refuse a case. They have to give it to a consular officer, and at the interview with the consular officer, that officer can decide whether he's going to forgive the error or not, right?
Yes. میگن که دو تا راه حلی که به شما دادم هیچ کدومشون مثلا بی‌نقص نیست. وقتی شما اینجوری درخواست بدین، اگر قبول بشین بر فرض مثال، بعد از اینکه قبول شدید، خب یه سری درخواست‌ها به سازمانی هست به اسم KCC باید بفرستین و این سازمان فقط مدارک شما رو میگیره، اصلا وظیفه نداره که به شما بگه نه شما اشتباه کردید رد میشید. وظیفه سفارت آمریکاست که یه آفیسری توی سفارت آمریکا که این تصمیم میگیره. یعنی شما از مرحله اول به هیچ صورت حتی قبول بشین رد میشین، مشکل نداره، میرسین به آفیسر و اون آفیسره که تصمیم میگیره آیا شما باید حالا بتونید قانعش کنید که شما بهترین کاری که میتونستید کردید، راه دیگه ای نداشتید که بتونید ثبت نام کنید و تصمیم اون آفیسر که آیا قبول بکنه و یا قبول نکنه. حالا یا شاید قبلش یه خبر جدید چیزی بیاد، ولی این تمام چیزی که میتونن برای شما برای استفاده از این گزینه‌ها بهتون بگن.
Okay.
So can we move on to other question?
Sure.
Yes. So again, about Afghans, they ask about, there's a question about work experience. You know, many of them, first of all, many of them move to other countries now, like in Iran or Pakistan, they don't have access to their education certificate, I don't know, work experience certificate. So they ask, what is, when you're going to use, first of all, you're going to use your job experience instead of diploma. So what they're going to ask you, is it like if I say I'm a tailor, they're going to accept it, or they want document or certificate or whatever? What they need to prove that. So let me translate in Farsi. دوستان در مورد این ازشون میپرسم با توجه به اینکه دوستان افغانمون توی خیلیشون از کشور اصلا خارج شدن، دیگه دسترسی به مدارکشون ندارن یا دسترسی به سابقه کاری خودشون ندارن. طبق قانون باید یا دیپلم داشته باشی یا اینکه سابقه کاری رو به جای دیپلم استفاده کنی. میپرسم که چه سابقه، وقتی میخوای سابقه کاری رو به جای دیپلم استفاده کنی چه چیزی رو باید بدی که اینا قبول کنن که تو سابقه کاری داری؟ یعنی مدرک باید بدی یا اینکه مثلا بگی من خیاطم، اینا قبول میکنن؟ این سوالی که ازشون پرسیدم.
Okay, so with work experience, let me just show you this this screen here. With work experience, I actually have I'll put this link up in a moment, but I have this explanation. And the point about education and work experience is that it's either or. You don't have to be educated, highly educated and have work experience, so you don't have to prove both of those. You have to show one or the other. The easiest normally is education, because as long as you can show that you reached a certain level of education, which is the point at which you go into university, just before you go into university actually is the point. If you can show that level of education, then you don't need to show work experience. But if you show work experience, the job needs to actually be of an approved level, a certain level of experience. You can't be, for example, a simple tradesman, a construction worker without a specific skill, for example. It has to be of a fairly high level of work. And in the article that I'll put up on screen, in this article, I've explained how you check whether your work experience is a valid enough work experience. And the work experience has to have been 2 years of work experience within the previous 5 years at interview. So whenever you're interviewed, so that could be a year or 2 years from now almost, when you're interviewed, you must have had 2 years experience in the previous 5 years, right? And the way you show the work experience isn't necessarily a certificate from a company, from an employer. It's more the sort of the progression, like showing your curriculum vitae or resume, your CV, showing pay slips, showing professional work output, whatever you have done, something that establishes that you have been doing this job at a certain level for the period of time they're interested in.
Yeah, great.
While you translate, I'll put a link up on there.
Of course, thank you. خب دوستان میگن برای سابقه کار اول میگن که شما در نظر داشته باشین که مدرک تحصیلی خیلی آسان تر از اینه که بخواین از کار استفاده کنین. پس اگر مدرک تحصیلی دارین دیگه لازم نیست برید و بهشون بگید که مثلا من سابقه کار دارم، راجع به کار توضیح بدین. فقط مدرک تحصیلی مهمه. چه مدرک تحصیلی میخواد؟ کمترین مدرکی که تحصیلی که لازم داره میگه وقتی است که درس تموم شه دیگه آماده اید برید برای دانشگاه. اون مدرکه که ما بهش میگیم دیپلم. اگر دیپلم دارید شما میتونید ثبت نام کنید و نیازی به سابقه کاری ندارید. اینجا یه مقاله رو به من نشون دادن که توی این مقاله کاملا توضیح دادن که مثلا چطور میشه از سابقه کاری استفاده کرد. بعد پرسیدم که چه مدرکی رو باید بدن که سابقه کاری رو ثابت کنه، مثلا قرارداد کاری میخوان یا چیزی. میگن که نه، هر گونه مدرکی که ثابت کنه شما توی 5 سال گذشته 2 سال سابقه کار دارین تا روز اینترویو، یعنی روزی که میریم مصاحبه به 5 سال قبل شما تو اون 5 سال 2 سال سابقه کار داشته باشین و هر چیزی که بتونین این سابقه کار رو ثابت کنه. ممکنه مثلا یه مسئولی ارائه میکنین، میگه اول اینکه باید این نیست که یه کارگر ساختمانی ساده باشین، باید یه کاری باشه که تخصص حساب بشه که توی این سایت باید پیداش کنین. و اینکه مدرک رو خیلی حساس نیستن که حتما با قرارداد کاری بیارین، بیمه بیارین، خیلی راحت‌تر میگیرن، فقط یه چیز جوری که بتونید ثابتش کنین که اون کار رو داشتین. Okay, I translate.
So you mentioned tailors there. So I just want to quickly show how someone would check their work experience. Like I said, it's experience of a certain level. So it's got to be in this database, the ONET database. You check for your job, the job that you actually do, and you've got to be in a job that is in job zone 4 or 5 with an SVP of 7 or higher, right? SVP is specific vocational preparation. Basically, they've graded all the jobs. So I just went into ONET. This is the ONET database. You can search this online. That's the onetonline.org link. I searched in this box here for tailors, and I scrolled down and found that the job zone 2 and SVP of 4 to 6. And so that job as a tailor would not be enough to qualify you for the DV lottery. You would not be able to qualify with that experience. Okay, so, and we could try another one if you like I don't know,
mechanic
programmer. I don't know. What would be another job in that Afghans perhaps might have?
You know, I'm thinking mostly the work, the one that they work like in offices. They have studied, and so I'm going for like options like tailor, mechanic, this kind of options that they don't need education for that. That's why.
Right, and they may be highly skilled, but they may not necessarily have been educated for that work. That's the difference. A skill isn't necessarily as highly prized, if you like, as an education to perform a vocation. So a mechanic, for example, let's say a heavy equipment mechanic, so someone working on perhaps big mechanical earth movers or something like that, they would be job zone 3, still not high enough to be qualified.
So you say job zone 4 point what?
It's so you've got to have a job zone 4 or greater, and an SVP range of 7 or greater.
Yes. So I'm going to translate.
And so if I show you, for example, like you mentioned, bank workers or office workers. Let me just say a financial manager, right?
Yes.
Someone who works in an office. In work, you see this says job zone 4, considerable preparation needed, and the SVP is from 7 to 8. So work experience as a financial manager working in an office for a financial organization, that would be enough. Now, what you can do is you take your job, if the title of the job isn't exactly right, you look at the skills and abilities and work activities and try and match them to your job. And so you might find, for example, you may be a tailor, which wouldn't qualify you, but perhaps you're a manager of other tailors, right? And then you describe yourself as a production manager, right? And you sort of, you match the description to try and find a job that is a little bit more a little bit more highly rated. So I just said industrial production manager. That could be someone who is running a tailor's operation with a number of different tailors, right? And this is job zone 4. That would pass. Do you see the point? Use a little bit of creativity in the way you describe your job.
Yes, exactly. Okay, so I'm going to translate this. بچه این سایتی که میبینید الان داره بهتون نشون میده دوستان عزیز، اینجا جاییه که اگر شما میخواین از سابقه کاریتون استفاده کنید که لینکش هم حتما براتون میذارم، باید برین توی این لینک و پیدا کنید اینکه آیا شغل شما اینجا هست یا نه. بعد از اینکه شغلتون رو پیدا کردید، بر فرض مثال شما خیاطی، مکانیکی، هر چی که هستید، چرا من شغلای خوبتر رو نمیگم؟ چون معمولا شغلی که مثلا طرف کارمند بانکه، اون آدم تحصیلات داره، به خاطر همین دیگه لازم نیست راجع به مقطع راجع به کارش صحبت کنه، همون دیپلمش یا فوق لیسانسش یا لیسانس رو میبره و دیگه نیازی نیست که در مورد کارش صحبت کنه. ولی ما کارهای عملی رو داریم مثال میزنیم، چون معمولا این کارا رو برای کسایی که دیپلم نگرفتن استفاده میکنیم. حالا اگر رفتین توی این لیست و کار خودتون رو پیدا کردید، اگر پیدا نکردید، اول اینکه نگران نشید، مثلا ممکنه یکم فرق بکنه عنوان کارا، برید توی توضیحات کارا ببینید چقدر به اون کاری که شما انجام میدید نزدیکه. بعد از اینکه اسم اون کارتون پیدا کردید، میگه باید که تو اون کار توی زون 4، یعنی نقطه توی طبقه بندی شده کارا، مثلا لول 1، لول 2، 3، 4، بعد و اینکه SVP اون کارم باید 7 باشه و اگر نباشه یعنی اون کارو نمیتونید به جای تحصیل استفاده بکنید. به خاطر همین همونجور که میبینید یکم استفاده از کار پیچیده است. مثلا ما الان خیاط رو زدیم، خیاط قبول نمیکنه چون همون زونی که گفتیم فکر کنم روی 3 بود و باید 4 باشه، یعنی تو گروه 3. بعد ولی اگر سرپرست یه گروه خیاطی بودیم قبول میکنن، یعنی بیشتر کارهای یکم لول بالاتر که مثلا مدیریت کردیم، یکم کار حرفه‌ای‌تر رو میتونن قبول کنن. ولی ناامید نشید، لینک رو براتون میذاریم، حتما برید همه کارا رو بگردید که اگر دیپلم ندارید از اون گزینه استفاده بکنید و هر سوالی در این زمینه داشتید، یه ذره این قضیه سایت تخصصی، میدونم زبان انگلیسی لازم داره، اگر سوالی داشتید حتما در خدمتتون هستم. Okay? So can we move on? Yeah, great. So yeah, do you know, I just added that I know it's English, it's everything is in English in this website. That's another challenge for them to find the job. I will try later just to go through this website with details how they can find it, maybe in Farsi. So maybe it's
there is a translation ability on this website, and I'm trying to remember how I turn it on. I've got it turned off here, but there we go. Can you see? Yes, you can see at the bottom here. Yes, there's a button that says translate, and you can pick all of the countries. Where I don't recognize the Afghan or Iranian flag.
It's a green. You know, now screen is very small for me. It's a green.
Yeah. Okay. Have a look at that. But you can translate the web page into many different languages. So, for example,
they can see your article in Farsi also. Yes. Actually, this one I think it's Farsi. Yeah, I cannot see it.
It will do.
I don't know if it's Urdu or Farsi. Anyway, okay, I cannot see.
So there's a translate button. For me, it appears in the bottom left-hand table, and you can pick your country, and right. So there is a translation available in there. Although, by all means, feel free to translate that properly, because this is an automatic translation, obviously, right?
Of course. Yeah. Okay, but دوستان میگن که توی پیج خودشون که BritSimon, it's a BritSimon says, yes?
That's right.
هست، این اسمشه BritSimon says، پایین براتون میذارمش. هم اگر بخواین مقالهایی که نوشتن، یه مقاله در مورد همین قضیه کار دارن بخونید، میتونید یه کاری بکنید، برید پایین پیج، یه دکمه هست که برای ترنسلیت یعنی ترجمه پیج هست، میرید اونو میزنید، پرچم کشورتون رو انتخاب میکنید، به زبان حالا فارسی و دری میاد. حالا به من میگن که خیلی ممکنه ترجمهش بشه خیلی عالی نباشه چون اتوماتیکیه، ولی اگه لازم شد من خودم همین کار برای شما میکنم، ترجمهش میکنم. Okay, that's great. So we move on to the next question.
Sure.
This one is gonna be a short question. It's again about Afghans. They ask about can they take up the photo required with their phone, or I don't know, digital phone. I know they always ask to do this in a professional studios, but many of them say that they don't have access. And if you have any suggestion for those they want to use their own phone or whatever instead of going to studio.
Yeah,
Just
absolutely.
saying it in Farsi. دوستان دارم راجع به عکس میپرسم. کسانی که دسترسی به عکاس ندارن ازشون پرسیدم آیا راهی هست که خودشون عکس بگیرن و اگر هست آیا هیچ پیشنهادی داری براشون که کار درست انجام بدن یا نه. Okay, we can.
So you don't need to use a professional photography studio to submit your photo. You can use a phone. Most phones, the camera on the phone these days is perfectly good enough to take the photo. Find a white background. Find a wall, with a white or a very light colored background. Okay, and very plain, nothing on the wall. Good lighting. Right, make sure the lights are as strong as possible, and have someone take a head and shoulders shot, just sort of this sort of shot, and that would be your best option. You don't need a lot of, you don't need fancy equipment, you don't need a studio, you don't need to pay for it. You can take it with a simple phone, whatever you have. And then that photo will be cropped down later to only 600 pixels by 600 pixels. It's a small photo, so don't worry about the resolution of the camera either. As long as it's fairly modern or a fairly modern phone, it will be good enough.
Okay, so just a quick question. Should they, in case if you see the background is not white enough, can they use Photoshop, just editing background?
Very, very carefully, because you actually, the instructions say don't edit the photo at all. But as long as you do a very subtle edit, very small amount of editing, it's okay. What you shouldn't do is go and edit out, take your take this off, take pimples off, whatever you look like. You'll never be refused for being ugly. Right? So it's not a beauty contest. Just take the best photo you can. Yes, clean up the background a little bit if you have to, but it's far better to just have a well-lit photo. And actually shining a light onto the wall behind you is a very good way to make sure you've got a very white background, very clean looking white background.
Yes, you're right. دوستان میگن که به هیچ وجه واجب نیست که از عکاسی حرفه‌ای استفاده بکنید. میتونید اگر دسترسی ندارید خودتون عکس بگیرید. میگه گوشی‌های این دور زمان بیشترشون کیفیتش در حدی هست که بشه خودتون عکس بگیرید. تنها چیزی که مهمه اینه که پشت سرتون حتما سفید باشه، خیلی خیلی روشن و سفید. یعنی اگر مثلا یه خاکستری خیلی روشنی باشه اشکال نداره. ازش پرسیدم که اشکالی داره اگر بخوایم مثلا ویرایش کنیم عکسو پشت سر، مثلا اگه خیلی سفید نشده با فتوشاپ بیایم ویرایش کنیم. میگه که خیلی مواظب باشین، چون خیلی اصرار کردن که به هیچ وجه عکستون رو روتوش نکنید. میگه نرید مثلا خالی روی صورتتون رو پاک کنین و اینا اینجور کارا. میگه هیچ کس تا الان به خاطر زشت بودن رد نشده توی برنامه، نگران نباشین. میگه به یه نفر بدید که عکس ازتون بگیره، شانه هاتون توی عکس باشه، مستقیم ازتون بگیره. اون چیزایی که گفتن رعایت کنید. میگه اگه میخواین بک‌گراندتون هم سفیدتر باشه میتونید یه نور مستقیم به دیوار بتابونید و مستقیم عکس بگیرید و بعد عکسو میارید توی این ابزاری که وجود داره، اونجا میبرید 600 در 600 پیکسل و هیچ مشکلی نداره. میگه نگرانی نداره، میتونید خودتون عکسو بگیرید. Okay, that was a very good answer because I was telling people go to professional studio. Many of them are like, I don't have access. I was like, find
Right.
it, just
Right.
find it. So
you can easily a suggestion for a video for you. I've created a video that shows how to take a photo with your phone. That would be a great video for you to create for your viewers.
Actually, I can put the link or something because quickly they need this information. Many of them are in rush. Yeah,
Well, but I'm ugly. You do it. You do a nice one.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So the other question is are refugees in other country, like in Europe, are allowed to apply for DV program? So
Yes.
when we say refugee, we have two type of refugee: asylum seekers and refugees. So refugees, the one that they obtain the passport and a travel document, and the second group is the one that they are still waiting to receive the decision. So I will translate it in Farsi. سوال بعدی اینه که آیا پناهنده ها اجازه درخواست برای این پروگرام دیوی پروگرام رو دارن یا نه. وقتی هم میگیم پناهنده دو بخش تقسیم میشن، پناهنده‌ای که پاسپورت گرفتن و پناهنده‌ای که هنوز منتظرن که جوابشون رو از این دولت‌های حالا اروپا یا هر جایی که هستن دریافت کنن.
So refugees and asylum seekers can both apply for the lottery, no problem. They can both be processed for the lottery. The difference, as you pointed out, is whether they have a travel document or not. And for an asylum seeker or someone that doesn't have any travel documentation, the US Embassy will help them with a travel pass in order to make that initial entry into the USA. It complicates things. I'm not saying it's easy, and it depends on the embassy and the consular officer to be helpful. But they will. There are ways to do that. And then for refugees, yes, that's absolutely fine. They can use the travel document they've got. If you're an asylum seeker or a refugee because you're stateless, then you could also use that other exemption that we talked about earlier with regard to the DV entry.
So in case, let's say, an Afghan refugee in Europe or in Turkey, can they use stateless as exemptions because now they don't have passport?
Well, they've got to be careful, right? It depends on the reasons why they're seeking asylum or refugee status in the country. I would say that at the moment it would be difficult to claim statelessness for Afghans and not for Iranians, right? Because you actually have to say it's more like some of the countries where the country is just absolutely in a terrible mess. And you are persecuted by your own country, and therefore you consider yourself stateless. For Afghans and Iranians, that probably won't be the case at the moment. So you have to be careful as to the reasons for your exit from the country. Okay, be a bit careful with that one.
So you cannot give like clear answer about which option should they, because like I'm talking about asylum seekers only, because the refugees with passport, with travel document, they're fine. But the one that they don't have it, how they're gonna fill this form because they ask for travel document? Are they gonna go and use the exemptions? Are they?
Really, the statelessness is a matter of persecution by the country on the person that causes them to leave the country and they can never return, right?
Yes.
If those are the reasons why you left, then you might be able to claim statelessness. If, on the other hand, you left for economic opportunity or for short-term disruption in the country and that sort of thing, but you would one day return to your country, given the opportunity, then you're probably not stateless. And so, and it needs some level of approval by the government. So some people, very few people should use that stateless thing, not everyone.
Yes, I understand. I'm just going to translate that.
Sure.
دوستان برای کسانی که پناهنده هستن و کسانی که پناهجو هستن، یعنی هنوز پناهندگیشون از کشورهایی که هستن نگرفتن، برای پناهنده که مشکلی نداره، اگر ترافل داکیومنت گرفتید میتونید ازش استفاده کنید و درخواست بدید مثل آدمای عادی. ولی برای اونایی که پناهجو هستن و هنوز اسایلمن، یعنی هنوز قبولی رو نگرفتن، هنوز مدرک دستشون نرسیده، خب این یه مشکلی هست که چیکار میتونید بکنید. میگه که برای بعضی گزینا میشه که خود سفارت میاد برای اینا که مدارک ندارن مدارک موقت بهشون میده که اینا بتونن روزی که قبول شدن پرواز کنن. یعنی ظاهرا اینجور گزینه‌ای وجود داشته و بهش میگم از چه گزینه استفاده کنه. یک ذره ظاهرا این قضیه حساسه که بیام بگه این کارو بکن. میگه خیلی به صورت کم بعضی اگر کسی از کشورش خارج شده و امکان به هیچ وجه برگشت به کشورش نداره، چون مثلا اون دولتش یا هر چی ممکنه این آدم از بین ببره، میتونه از گزینه بی وطن یا همون استیتلس استفاده بکنه. باز با توجه به شرایطتون خودتون باید تصمیم بگیرید آیا این گزینه‌ها شامل حال شما به عنوان یه پناهجو میشه یا نه. که اگه ثبت نام کنین بازم میرین اون قضیه بعدی، مرحله بعدی که برید توی سفارت و سفارت تصمیم بگیره آیا شما، اون آفیسر سفارت توی سفارت تصمیم بگیره آیا شما گزینه رو که انتخاب کردین لایق چی داشتین که استفاده بکنین، استحقاقش رو داشتین یا نه. Okay, and very quick question is I will say it in Farsi then English so you can start. در مورد افغانایی که تو ایران به دنیا آمدن کشور مشمولیتشون کجا باید باشه. About Afghans who were born in Iran, there are many, so they have Iranian, some of them, mostly they have Afghan passport. It says the place of birth, Tehran, for example. So are they going to use the like eligibility country as Afghanistan or like
Iran.
Iran?
So the eligibility for entry into the lottery should be their place of birth. Okay, in almost all cases. And you should have documentation from the country where you were born to show you were born there. Even if later you get a passport from Afghanistan or China or wherever you later get a passport from, and whatever passport and nationality you hold today, that's not the point. The point is, where were you born? Okay. Now there are a couple of exceptions to that. One exception is where the country where you're born is not eligible to participate in the DV lottery. And in that case, you may be able to claim the country of one of your parents if your parents were only in that country where you were born temporarily, right? For work reasons or something like that. They were there for 6 months or a year because because they had been sent to that country. And so, for example, my country, England, is not eligible. So if you were an Afghan, but your parents were both Afghan, but you were in England when you were born, right? Because your parents were there temporarily, only temporarily, then you could claim Afghanistan as your country of chargeability. But only do that if the country where you were born is not eligible for the lottery, right? And neither of your parents must be from that country where you were born. You can't, if your Afghan father married an English woman or vice versa, you couldn't therefore claim that you were there temporarily. That's one exception. And the other exception is through marriage. Like in my case, I was able to enter the lottery because my wife was from Spain. Her country was eligible, mine was not. And so we were both able to enter the lottery. Okay, right. Those are the two exceptions, essentially.
Can I ask about, in Iran, if you were born in Iran and you don't have Iranian parents, sometimes even if your father is Afghan, they will not give you documents. So
right.
Many Afghans have this problem. They were born in Iran. They don't have any Iranian document. But when they go to Afghanistan, and because mostly they're like, I don't know how they call them illegal immigrant or whatever.
Right.
So when they're in Iran, they cannot obtain any document or ID. So they return to their country, like the country that their parents are from. So Afghanistan give them passport, but since the place of birth is Iran, in the passport written like place of birth Iran. So in this case, is that okay? Again, can they use the Iranian, like Iran as the country that like
they should still use Iran in that case. And you're mentioning that it says in their passport the place of birth is in Iran. But are they able to get a birth certificate of any sort for Iran at the time of birth or later?
Yeah, I don't have all information, but as I remember when I was in Iran, they couldn't get any document.
Okay, so ideally, the country where you were born is the authority over registering births in that country, and so they should give you a document. But I understand if they don't, then the next best thing would be from a birth certificate that you obtain in Afghanistan, let's say, that says you were born in Iran. That's not as good, but it may be accepted. And the passport is like another document that works in the same way. But your country of birth should be proven by your birth certificate, not your passport, really.
Yeah. So in any case, they should write their place of birth.
Regardless, yes. Right? Yeah. So they should always be listing Iran, because if on your passport, it's your Afghanistan passport, it says you were born in Iran, you've caused a problem, right?
Yes,
Now,
yes.
that's Iran and Afghanistan. I understand the situation there. Normally, if you make a mistake on your country of eligibility, if you make a mistake, and those countries are both in the same region, they're both in Asia, they're both in Europe, or they're both in Africa, the mistake wouldn't cause you to be disqualified. But if you make a mistake that where the country that you said you were eligible for is actually in a different region and you weren't entitled to use that country, you will be disqualified, 100% certain.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
understand. اوکی بچه، برای راجع به افغانایی که تو ایران به دنیا اومدن میگه که اگر توی مدارکتون نوشته که متولد ایرانین باید از سهمیه ایران استفاده بکنید. گفتم که خیلی وقتا هست که من حداقل وقتی که من ایران بودم میدونستم که مدارک به دوستان افغان نمیدادن متاسفانه تو ایران. گفتم در این شرایط چطور میشه؟ میگه مهم نیست، حتی اگر اون پاسپورتی که بهتون دادن توش نوشته ایران، شما باید بزنید کشور مشمولیت که زیر قسمت اون جایی بود که زدون کشور محل تولد، بعد کشور مشمولیت، باز همون کشور محل تولدتون رو بزنید که ایرانه. و میگه حالا یه چیزی هم بهتون بگم، اگر 1% یک خطایی رخ بده، شما مثلا باید از سهمیه افغانستان استفاده می‌کردین، اشتباهی زدین ایران یا از ایران افغانستان، روزی که بریم مصاحبه معمولا به خاطر این گزینه شما رو رد صلاحیت نمی‌کنن، چون هر دو تا کشور توی آسیاست و از سهمیه آسیا استفاده کردین. ولی اگر مثلا شما به جای کشور مثلا افغانستان کشوری رو می‌زدید که تو اروپا سهمیه یک منطقه دیگر رو استفاده کرده بودیم و 100% رد صلاحیت می‌شدین. به خاطر همین دوستانی که مدرک دارن و توی مدرکشون نوشته شده که متولد ایران هستن، باید از سهمیه کشوری که به دنیا آمدن یعنی ایران استفاده کنن، حتی اگر پدر مادرشون افغان هست. این سوالو من خودم هم نمیدونستم دقیق، ولی بازم اگر جوری ثبت نام کردید که افغانستان رو زدید تو الان مشکلی نداره، میگه رد صلاحیتتون نمی‌کنن، بعداً میتونید این قضیه رو اصلاح کنید. Okay, we're done with Afghan's question. There are some general question. It's going to be hopefully quick question. Some of them like yes or no.
Okay.
So hopefully
can we talk about the embassy and
yes.
where people will interview for Afghanistan's for
Yes,
Afghans in particular?
yes,
I don't know. Are most Afghans like comfortable with what's where they will interview and that sort of thing, or do they understand how that's going to work?
No, the DV22, they were expecting to have interview in Kabul, but with this situation, I don't know what is going to happen for them. So it's like very unclear. And for new people, that's honestly very unclear. They don't know. They just want to apply and see what's happened next. So if there is any update about that, it's going to be great.
Okay. So I did want to address that because I've had Afghanis asking me this question, and you're right. For DV 2023, it probably isn't important. They just want to apply, and hopefully by then things will be a bit more normal. But for DV 2022, it's clear that the the embassy in Afghanistan in Kabul will not reopen. It's not going to reopen anytime soon. But what will probably happen at some point is that there's something, the same thing that happened for Iran will happen for Afghanistan. So if you're looking at the screen here, yeah. So when you go onto the virtual embassy of Iran and you click on visas and immigrant visas, it shows that, for visas, where do you go? Oh, hang on, let's see. I was hoping to see that. Let's see. News. Well, I can't find it right now, but immigrant visas, I thought it was there actually. Oh, there we go. So these 3 embassies are listed as the place where you will have your interview. So if you're Iranian, you would go to Turkey or UAE or to Armenia, right? To Yerevan, Abu Dhabi or Ankara. And those 3 embassies have been designated, and those countries have agreed to allow passage from Iran to people to go to the US embassy. And there's an arrangement, there's a diplomatic arrangement that has happened, right? And that happened years ago, obviously. It took time to arrange that. But I'm hoping and I'm expecting that for Afghanistan, the same thing will happen. And neighboring countries to Afghanistan will agree to allow people to travel into their countries in order to attend interviews and that sort of thing. Now, that's what I hope will happen, but it isn't going to happen quickly. How quickly it happens, I don't know. Is it going to be 2 months, 3 months? I don't know. There's a delay in DV 2022 processing anyway. So for now, I'm saying to people, just wait for a couple of months. Just wait and see how things get organized. The other thing you can do is, if you know you can travel to some particular country, then if you can, travel there early and change your embassy location. You have to contact KCC and say, I'm able to get to Turkey or Greece or wherever you are safely able to get to. And then ask for your interview to take place at that embassy in that country, which is perfectly fine. That will work. But in general, KCC want to know that you have moved there to that country. So it's best if you can have a local address and say, I'm living at that local address. It says in here, you have to be there, kind of thing. Make sure that you're actually in the country. So that's what I wanted to point out. It's going to take time to sort out. But that's what people in DV 2022 are having to deal with.
And can you just add, because it's going to be the same question for Iranian, lately the embassy in Ankara says it used to be like people could travel and go to their interview, but they say just for residents. So many Iranians are trying to get resident permit for like short terms, and this is, and many of them are trying to change their embassy from Ankara to Abu Dhabi. So many of them ask, should we wait, specifically people with very low case number, like lower than 100. So they say, what should we do? This is a time that they're current. Some people are like 1,000, 2,000. They have time to change their embassy. Sure. And do you have any answer for these people? Should they ask to change their embassy?
So you'll have to translate all this in a moment, but yes.
I'm taking notes.
So basically, yes, Ankara embassy or Turkey has said they'll only handle local residents. The reason they said that was because they didn't want people traveling from other countries and bringing COVID, to the country, and they didn't have permission from the Turkish government to have people coming over the border for that reason. And so there were controls which the US embassy had to try and observe. Okay. Those controls may change as the COVID pandemic decreases. Things will get easier. Ankara will once again open its doors to non-residents, right? But in the meantime, if you want to try and have an interview earlier, then yes, you can ask KCC to move, and you have to email KCC, explain that you can't go to Ankara embassy and that you prefer to go to Abu Dhabi or to Yerevan. And they will hopefully take account of that. But for those people with very low case numbers, if you're interviewed later, it doesn't matter. You won't miss out on your chance because they've gone past your number. You still get an interview. It'll just be a little bit later. So don't worry, is what I would say. Right now we've got a year to go. There's no need to panic right now because right at this moment, Ankara is not available to DV lottery candidates.
Is KCC usually going to change the interviews location for people in this case? Imagine people, they don't have resident permit in Turkey and they are in Iran, so they're current, the case number is current. So they were asking, should we be waiting for KCC to move the cases to other embassy, or it's like the job to ask KCC?
You can ask yourself. If you know very well that you can travel to Yerevan, for example, you've got friends there, perhaps you've got somewhere where you can say, you can ask, you can email KCC and ask them and explain that it's very easy for you to get there. And here is the address that I will be staying at while I'm there. And you can make it, you can help yourself by making it easier for KCC to make that decision, right? If KCC are very busy, they're not going to be sort of looking to solve problems for problematic cases, if you see what I mean. So if you can make it easy for them, and they'll read the email, they can see you've thought of everything, and they'll go, yep, I'll move this case to Yerevan.
Yeah,
That's it. So make it easy, be proactive, and help yourself.
Okay, so I'm going to make like a summary of what you
Sure,
said.
yeah.
Yes.
That's quite a bit.
خب دوستان، در مورد اول دوستان افغان، خود سایمون خواست اضافه کنه، گفت میخوام یه چیزی راجع به سفارت بگم. معمولا این برای کسایی که پارسال قبول شدن. الان سفارت آمریکا توی افغانستان بسته شده و الان ممکنه شما فکر کنید که من کجا برم و مصاحبه‌مو قراره کجا انجام بدم. میگه که با توجه به اینکه میدونید الان این سایت رو به من نشون داد، میگه که 3 تا سفارت، ایران چون سفارت آمریکا نداره، 3 تا سفارت ترکیه و ارمنستان و دبی اینا اومدن، ابوظبی اومدن و یه قراردادی بستن و قبول کردن که ساکنایی که از ایرانیان و اینا مصاحبه کنن و این چند سال ادامه داشته و اینجوری پیش میرفته. و سایمون امیدواره که این اتفاق برای شما دوستان افغانم بیفته، با توجه به شرایط جدید کشورهای همسایه‌تون که نزدیک شما قبول بکنن و سفارتای اونجا بیاد بگه آقا ما افغان‌ها رو اینجا مصاحبه می‌کنیم. میگه سریع اتفاق نمیفته، ممکنه 2 ماه طول بکشه، ممکنه 3 ماه طول بکشه، ولی خوشبینانه اگر بهش نگاه کنیم به امید خدا اتفاق میفته و شما میرید توی قسمت‌های این کشورهای که همسایه‌تون هستن، حالا ممکنه هر کشوری باشه، مصاحبه میشید. برای اونایی که قبولی گرفتن، برای اونایی که تازه دارن ثبت نام می‌کنن، فکر نمی‌کنم این نگرانی داشته باشه. به امید خدا تا شما ثبت نام کنید و قبول بشید، این تکلیف این قضیه 100% احتمال زیاد روشن شده باشه. یه چیزی هم برای دوستان ایرانی بهتون میگم، اونایی که قبولی سال 2022 هستن و الان گیج شدن که آنکارا قبول نمیکنه، میگه فقط کسایی که ساکن اونجا هستن و میگه که مثلا فقط ایروان براتون مونده و ابوظبی. الان میگه من پرسیدم چیکار کنه، به نظرتون این افراد بیان درخواست تغییر سفارت بدن؟ میگه به نظر من یکی که دلیل این که سفارت آنکارا اومده این تصمیم گرفته این که نبوده که خودش این تصمیم رو فقط گرفته باشه، یکی این که الان به خاطر کرونا نمیتونن، اجازه نداشتن از دولت ترکیه که بیان مردم از کشورهای دیگه بیارن داخل کشور ترکیه، یعنی نوبت مصاحبه بدن که مردم از کشورهای دیگه پاشن بیان تو ترکیه. با کم شدن این ویروس احتمالاً قضیه بهتر میشه، ولی در حال حاضر تنها کاری که میتونید بکنید اینه که تصمیم با شماست. اگر میدونید برید درخواست بدید، منتظر KCC نمونید. میگه خودتون به خودتون کمک کنید. شما اگر چشم را بمونید که KCC میاد خودش پرونده من انتقال میده به یه جای دیگه، خیلی سرشون شلوغه. همینجور که میبینید 2022 خیلی کند دارن عمل میکنن. پس اگر فکر میکنید میتونید مثلا تو ایروان مصاحبه بشید، ایمیل بدید بگید من میتونم تو ایروان فلان، یا آدرس هم بدین، من اینجا میرم میمونم، لطفاً جای مصاحبه منو تغییر بدین که تغییرش بدن. برای بچه‌ای که کیس نامبر خیلی پایین دارن میگه نگران نباشید، در هر صورت شما که کارن شدید حتما مصاحبه میشید. یکم تأخیر ممکنه تو کارتون ایجاد بشه ولی به هیچ وجه استرس نداشته باشید. I think I said everything. So yes. Yeah, thank you. So can we just go to the general question? It's
Sure.
going to be some, yeah. So بچه سوالای عمومی رو میپرسم. اول اینکه آیا محدودیت سنی وجود داره برای ثبت نام؟ Is there any age limitation to apply for DV lottery?
No. The education requirements mean that in general people will only meet the education requirement by about age 18. Could be 17, 18, etc. But if someone now, for example, is 16 and wants to enter the lottery, knowing that they will be 17 before they interview and nearly 18, let's say, they can enter the lottery now, as long as they have met the education requirements by the time they interview. Okay. And at the other end of the scale, there's no upper age limit either. You could enter the lottery and I've known people who have won the lottery at 70, 75 years old. The only thing I would say is it's hard to immigrate. It's not an easy thing. And so if you're old, you have to consider how you'll support yourself in a country like America, which, although it's very wealthy and affluent, doesn't, it doesn't have a socialized, medical system, and it would be hard for an older person to come to America if they can't work, for example. So you'd have to have the means, the ability to support yourself for the rest of your life in America. But no, there is no specific age limit.
Yes, great. دوستان محدودیت سنی وجود نداره با توجه به مدرک تحصیلی که از شما خواستن، یعنی که میگن دیپلم داشته باشید، میگه حدود 16-17 سالگی احتمالاً بتونید درخواست بدید اگر بدونید که تو روز تاریخ مصاحبه دیگه دیپلم رو گرفتید. این چیزیه که اطلاعاتی که دقیقاً برعکسش توی متأسفانه سایت فارسی میگن که حتما با مدرک دستتون باشه و منم همینطور فکر میکردم، ولی سایمون میگه اینطور نیست و تا روز مصاحبه اگر مدرک تحصیل رو گرفته باشه، یعنی اگر الان مثلا دارین دبیرستان رو میخونید و تا روز مصاحبه شما مدرک رو گرفتید، میدونید مثلا تا 1 سال و نیم دیگه، 1 سال و 3 ماه دیگه که مصاحبهتون برسه بر فرض قبولی شما دیپلم دارید، میتونید ثبت نام بکنید، نگران نباشید. Can I ask you a quick question? What is this, you know, when they explain about diploma, there is this 12 years of diploma that make confusion in some countries, specifically in Iran, I know that there are like 2 type of education. One of them is 11 years, it's a diploma, and the other one is you have 1 year extra, they call it preparation for college. So now in Iran they say if you have this that 11 years you cannot apply. Is that right? But it's considered as a diploma in Iran.
Well, the question I would have is, are you able to enter what Americans call college, but I call university? Can you enter a university directly with that 11-year education, or
Yes.
can you only do it with the 12-year education?
No, you can apply, you can actually go and go to any university. Actually, I had the same diploma and then I studied in university.
Then that's fine.
Yeah. Okay,
So the point of the level of education, the 12 years and the formal course of education, is based on the American system. And an American kid, you know, American child, by age 18, finishes high school, what they call high school here. So at 18 years old or so, they're then at the level when they can enter college or university. College and university is the same thing, right? So they can enter college at 18 years old. Some American kids won't have reached that level until 19, or may have reached that level at 17. It's not the age. It's not actually even the number of years that you were in school. It's the point that you've reached to actually be able to enter university. If you go on to have a bachelor's degree, then you were obviously able to enter university. So you've proven the point with education anyway. But no, from my understanding, they should accept both the 11 and the 12-year versions of the education system you described there.
Yeah. دوستان میگن که دیپلم 11 ساله 12 ساله. از من پرسید یه سوالی دارم، این دیپلمی که 11 ساله دارین آیا بعد از اینکه میگیرین اجازه ورود به دانشگاه دارین؟ گفتم آره. و میگن که پس میتونید. این بحثشون اینه که به این وقتی میگن دیپلم 12 ساله منظورشون اون سیستمی که توی آمریکا هست و توی کشور مختلف ممکنه متفاوت باشه. پس اگر دیپلمی دارین، مهم نیست چند سال است، 11 یا 12، اگر از اون لحظه که درس تموم شده اجازه ورود به دانشگاه دارید، یعنی اون همون چیزی که آمریکا میخواد، پس نگرانی نداشته باشین. توضیحات بیشترش رو دیگه لازم نیست بهتون بگم، همین کافی بود برای خیلی‌ها که میپرسیدن دیپلم 11 ساله 12 ساله و نگران بودن. And just I want to add this, there is this option vocational school. In Farsi websites, many of people says you shouldn't use this option because it's considered as not high school. While we have a high school degree, it's again 12 years, but in Farsi we call it vocational. It's you have theoretical courses plus some, for example, painting. So some people confuse, is it mine is vocational, should I select that? But in other website you read, no, don't use that, otherwise they will not consider that as diploma. Can you just give us a quick information about what is vocational?
Right. So vocational training or education is training towards a specific vocation. In other words, towards a specific job. That's what it means. That's what the word means, vocational. So, for example, I could, as you say, I could be going to school to become a painter or a mechanic or a plumber. Education towards a specific vocation, towards a specific job, is not considered sufficient for passing the qualification, for meeting the eligibility. So if you went to a school which is described as vocational, But at that school, you also did additional things like math and arithmetic and language or whatever other things. But you took some painting courses. Then be smart and don't use the word vocational in describing that school, because what they're concerned with is whether you're getting general academic education, which will move you to a university degree education to that level, but it's general academics. They don't want to see you training as a nurse or a painter or even an accountant. Training for a specific vocation is not qualifying.
I see that's just understanding, because we call it vocational, but we have a literature, math and physics and everything, plus it's focused also in specific vocation like painting, but as you say, so that's a diploma.
Be smart. Just be smart about it, right?
Yes. دوستان میگه برای کسایی که فنی حرفه‌ای درس خوندن، فنی حرفه‌ای توی آمریکا به معنی مثل مال ما نیست. فنی حرفه‌ای توی آمریکا اینه که شما توی مثلا رفتید فقط بر فرض مثال یه سری چیزای تکنیکی مکانیکی یاد گرفتین یا نقاشی، هیچ گونه درس نظری نداشتین، یعنی مثلا ریاضی نداشتین، فارسی نداشتین، ادبیات نداشتین، در صورتی که فنی حرفه‌ای و کاردانشی که ما داریم درسای کتابم داریم و فقط کار عملی به ما یاد نمیدن. درست اسمش مشابه شده، میگه باهوش باشین و از گزینه چون ووکیشنال اگر بزنید به معنی اینکه من رفتم یک مدرسه درس خوندم که فقط کار فنی هست، که فنی حرفه‌ای آموزشگاه داریم میری مثلا آرایشگری یاد میگیری، هیچ گونه درس نظری بهت یاد نمیدن. میگه اون ووکیشنال توی گزینه ها به اون معنی، اگر شما زدید من دیپلمم ووکیشنال، اونا فکر میکنن که شما هیچ گونه درس نظری نخونی و سواد ندارید، به خاطر همین سواد نظری ندارید، به خاطر همین نظری منظورم کتاباست که ریاضی و فارسی و ایناست. پس برید دیپلم بزنید اگرم حتی فنی حرفه‌ای و کاردانش هستید. Okay, so actually I got many of my answers from this explanation about education. So, and is associate degree is some university degree or it's a university degree? Because it's
either way, the question when you enter the lottery, there's a question that says to pick your education level. The selection you make there doesn't make any difference to your chances of being selected. And when you fill in the DS-260, there's a similar question again about education level. It doesn't make any difference to your chance of being approved. Okay, so don't worry about the level you pick. So you could say that some university or whatever, but whatever you pick, it doesn't matter. It's just they're just trying to sort of collect data on the education level of people that are applying for the lottery. It's nothing more than that. It doesn't increase or decrease your chances of selection.
دوستان در مورد مدرک تحصیلی پرسیدم که کاردانی جزء میشه سام یونیورسیتی دیگری یا یونیورسیتی، میگه واقعا زیاد مهم نیست، میتونید اینو بزنید اونو بزنید. توی این اطلاعات اولیه که پر میکنید، مرحله بعدی که قبول میشید و جزئیات میخوان اونجا بیشتر توضیح میدید. حالا دیگه بستگی به خودتون داره که بزنید برخی از مدارک دانشگاه، یعنی هنوز مدرک نگرفتم، سام یونیورسیتی کورسز، یا اینکه بزنید یونیورسیتی دیگری، خودتون میدونید، هیچ فرقی نمیکنه. So for the children, there is a question about children. If they are above 21, should the parents, if parents want to apply, should they write all the children names even if they are like 24 or 5, or they just want to list the children less than 21 years old?
When you enter the lottery, the form won't let you enter a child more than 21 years old. When you fill in your DS-260, once you've been selected later on, if you're a winner, you list all of your children, even those that are over 21. So you can only enter with children under 21. You can only take children under 21, and they must be unmarried too. If they get married, they're no longer eligible to be your derivative. If they get married and even if they're 19 and they're married, they're no longer eligible. The other thing that can happen is that people enter with their children that are, let's say, 20 years old when they enter, but they turn 21 later on. They become 21 later on before the selection, before the person becomes a winner, or later on. There is a period of time of protection for those cases, so that somebody actually can still be approved when they're over 21, but it's a short period of time. It's about 6 or 7 months extra you get, by the time you interview. So sometimes people will age out. They will not be able to be a derivative. And sometimes a 21-year-old who's already 21 will be a derivative because they're only a few months above 21 when they interview.
So should they, because they don't want to bother them in case they cannot take the children, like they are 25 or married. So the question was, should I write the name? So take a picture and do all the interview. Well, I cannot take this kid. So in that case, can they just escape and not write that kid, the children? Because otherwise they're going to need their pictures and other things, information.
Yeah. In the lottery, they can't, when they're entering the lottery, they can't enter those kids. When they fill out the DS-260, they should enter those kids. They won't take those kids to the interview. They won't, because those kids are 25 years old or something. They won't need photos and medicals and all of that sort of thing for those children because they're older. But they should list them because when they get to America, they could start a process to bring those older children later. It will take years, but they could start the process. But of course, they must have listed those children on their application, on their DS-260, not on the entry. Okay, just to be clear, not on the entry, only on the DS-260.
اوکی، دوستانی که بچهای زیر 21 سال دارن، معذرت با بالای 21 سال دارن، میگه که برای ثبت نام اولیه لازم نیست اسم بچه‌هاتون رو بزنید. البته بعداً که قبول بشید یه فرمی به شما میدن که تمام جزئیات بچه‌هاتون رو باید بنویسین. میگه که بچه‌ای که 20 سالشه ثبت نام کردین ممکنه تا مصاحبه 21 سال بشه. یه 6 ماه هم بهتون وقت میدن که بتونین بچه رو با خودتون ببرید. البته بچه‌های متأهل به هیچ وجه جزش نمیشن حتی اگه 18 سالشون باشه. بعد میگه که بعد توی فرم بعدی همه بچه‌هاتون رو بنویسین وقتی قبول شدید، برای اینکه میتونید در آینده این بچه رو از روش‌های مختلف دیگه با خودتون چند سال طول می‌کشه ولی میتونید ببریدش. پس در کل بچه زیر 21 سالتون رو نیازی نیست توی فرم اولیه بنویسید. اگر زیر 21 سالن میتونید همشون رو بنویسید و اوکیه. Okay, so
one quick thing there. Some people may not live with their children. Perhaps they're separated or divorced or whatever. If you have children, you must list them on the DV entry when you're entering the DV lottery, even if you don't live with them anymore, if they're in another country. And if you must list them on your entry. If you fail to list anybody, a spouse or a child that is eligible to be on your application, and you don't list them, that is automatic disqualification, 100% certain disqualification. You must list all your eligible children and your spouse.
What if the person, for example, are in the divorce procedure and the husband or wife doesn't want to help? So in this case, they cannot apply.
They should not apply, or if they apply and they know that they're never going to take their children, the main thing is they need a photo, right? Yeah. Well, if you're never going to take your child to the interview, then the photo that you have doesn't actually have to be of the person that is your child. If you think about it, again, use your head, right?
Yeah, they mainly have some photos for sure from their kids, but not the perfect photo it's required for DV for entry. So they can use any photo that they have, even if they
would not use any photo they have of their child. I'm trying to sort of give a hint here without being too specific, because this is actually would be breaking the rule, right?
Yeah, that's going to be difficult for me to translate it in the same way.
So let's say I'm divorced and I can't get my ex-wife to give me a photo of the child. Here's what I would do. I would ask a friend with a child to let me take a photo of that child, because I'm never going to take that child to the interview. Nobody's ever going to know that that isn't a photo of my child. Do you see what I mean? Yes. But you can't apply for the DV lottery without the photo of the child. So you take a photo, and it has to be a photo set up for DV lottery, which is head and shoulders like this, but white background, right? So that's what I would do. Personally, that's what I would do. Or if you don't want to do that, then don't enter.
Yes, I understand. برای دوستانی که بچه کوچیک دارن و بچه پیششون نیست و نمیتونن اون عکس از بچه بگیرن. این سوالی که پرسیدم، فکر کنید مثلا دارین طلاق میگیرین، شوهرتون باید حتما اسم شوهرتون رو بزنید توی لیست و وقتی اسم شوهر رو میزنید حتما عکسش رو میخواد و وقتی اسم بچه رو میزنید عکسش رو میخواد. من پرسیدم اگه اون شوهر مثلا میخواد طلاق بگیره یا طلاق جدا از همن و عکس نمیده به طرف یا عکس بچه رو نمیده که خیلی اتفاق میفته، میگه به هیچ وجه راه ثبت نام ندارید، باید ثبت نام. ولی اگر نمیخواین بچه رو با خودتون ببرید، خب قاعدتا میخواین بچه رو ننویسین. اگر بچه رو ننویسید دروغ گفتید و حذفتون میکنه. به خاطر همین اگر هیچ راهی ندارید، یه عکسی که دارید حالا خیلی کیفیت اون چیزی هم که میخواین نباشه اشکال نداره، بذارید. نهایتا شما بچه رو که نمیخواین ببرید، هر عکسی دارید بذارید، نهایتا بعدن حذف میشه. این تنها کاریه که میتونید بکنید، وگرنه ثبت نام نکنید چون عکس لازمه و اون عکس رو باید بذارید. ولی اگر این بچه رو قرار نیست ببرید، مهم نیست چه عکسی رو دارین میذارید. So the small mistakes, actually this is almost the last question.
Okay.
The small mistake in the entry, is that okay? Like misspelling, sometimes name like and the surname, or like they make mistake and write the name in the so
It's
that's gonna be okay. And
yeah,
also,
it's okay. What they're looking for, if you make a mistake with one letter in your name, or you've got the wrong date of birth by a day or two, or the month is wrong, that's not really very important. One little mistake on your form is okay, as long as as long as there's not lots of mistakes. If there's lots of mistakes, like you've got the wrong date of birth, the wrong name, the wrong address, right? You've made all sorts of mistakes. They're going to think that you're trying to create some sort of fraud. So as long as they don't have any concerns of fraud, as long as they think you've been trying to be honest, but you just made a simple mistake, then they will let you correct that later. So you've got a mistake on your entry form. When you come to fill in your DS-260, you correct it on the DS-260. That's how you do it.
دوستان برای اشتباهاتی که توی فرم اولیه ممکنه پیش بیاد پرسیدم که اسم رو به جای فامیلی بنویسین، فامیلی رو جای اسم بنویسین. آیا مشکلی پیش میاد یا غلط املایی داشته باشه؟ میگه نه، غلط املایی یه دونه اگر پیش بیاد اشکال نداره، نه اینکه 10 تا غلط. بیاین تاریخ تولد اشتباه بزنین، اسم اشتباه بزنین، همه رو اشتباه بزنین، ممکنه فکر کنن با یه هدفی این اشتباه رو زدین، به خاطر همین ردتون ممکنه بکنن بعدن. ولی اگر یک غلط املایی یا یک تاریخی رو اشتباه نوشتید هیچ مشکلی نداره و بعدن میتونید توی مراحل بعدی بعد از قبولیتون این مشکل رو حل کنید. Actually, I escaped one question, but let me ask you, is that possible? There's address line 1 and 2, but our address are like too long and we cannot be, like many people, they cannot write the address there. Is there any way to, I tried in a video to explain how to write it in a short way, so to give them but again, still there is like this address. My home is in the first alley in front of this high school. I don't know, ask the grocery stores, they will show you. So in this case, can they make it shorter, but I mean like escape some of the part, like
right.
street.
So the question there is, how would you provide your address, for example, if you were going to receive a letter, like from a bank or from a lawyer or whatever? How would you provide the address? Would it have the description, the first house on the corner after the bakery? Or would you just have the address and the postman would know where to bring it because he knows your name and the street, right? And if the postman, if the mailman, or if someone delivering a letter would know how to find you from the short version, then the short version is fine, right? They're not actually going to send you anything to your address until it's time to give you the passport with the visa in it, and usually you pick that up anyway, or you have a courier. So your address isn't very important, so a shortened version is good.
دوستانی که آدرسشون خیلی بلنده و توی آدرس لاین 1 و 2 جا نمیشه، میتونن ببینید چطور آدرستون رو به یک کسی میدید که یه نامه براتون بیاره. به اون صورت هر جوری که میدونید که پستچی میفهمه آدرس شما رو و ساده ترش میتونید بکنید، سادهش کنید که جا بشه. میگه خیلی آدرس استفاده نداره، ولی بعدا نهایتا ویزاتون رو بخوان بفرستن به اون آدرس، که البته برای کشور ما چون سفارت اونجا نیست، همون ویزا رو فکر کنم توی همون کشوری که میریم مصاحبه میشیم میگیریم. And the last question, this is because I'm a DV 2022
Sure.
winner. Is there any good news for us? Because they are super slow, very slow. I just forgot about it, and I'm waiting. One day they're gonna just announce something.
Right. It's not going to be a good year. So there's a couple of problems. Number one, there's been a delay in starting DV 2022 processing because they spent extra time on DV 2021. That's the first thing. That's cost us a couple of months. But the other thing is this tiered prioritization that you've probably heard about, where DV lottery is considered to be in tier 4. And so what that means is that the embassies around the world have to take care of tier number 1, 2, and 3 before they take care of tier 4. And that reduces the amount of capacity at the embassies for DV cases. We're fighting that, but at the moment, that rule is still in place, and it's going to slow down the amount of interviews that can be done. And if we weren't able to remove that, or if the government don't remove that in all of DV 2022, it will create a bad year. We won't have 50,000 visas, 55,000 visas issued. It will be less than that because of the prioritization.
So mostly people with a higher case number are going to be affected?
Yeah. That's always the way. There's always a risk for higher case numbers. Last year, we saw all regions go current. And there's a complex explanation, which we could talk offline about why that happened. But I don't think we're going to go current for all regions this year. And so probably what it means is that high case numbers won't have a chance to get their visas. And in Asia in particular, that could easily be the case because most of the early case numbers go to Nepal and Iran. And then the rest of Asia, for example, in Afghanistan, Afghans will have very high case numbers sometimes, whereas Iranians won't have high case numbers. You probably won't find Iranian case numbers over, they won't be higher than 20,000, right?
Yeah. This year, there were many of them, like a very low case number. Whatever I find, yes, it's like 5,000.
Same thing for Nepal. Nepal case numbers are going to be about 10,000 or less, even though Asia as a region goes to 30,000 and something. And so you might have an Afghan at 30,000, but you won't have an Iranian at 30,000.
Yes, I understand. دوستان عزیز میگن که من یه سوالی پرسیدم برای قبولیه 2022 گفتم که خبر خوبی ندارین چون من خودم قبولیه 2022 هم و ظاهرا کیسیسی خیلی داره کند عمل میکنه. میگه متاسفانه نه، به خاطر اینکه توی سفارت ها اومدن و مصاحبه لاتاری رو توی لول 4 گذاشتن، یعنی اهمیتش سطح 4، یعنی برفرض سطح 1 و 2 و 3 رو باید اول انجام بدن اگر وقتی اون بیان مصاحبه کنن بچه‌ای که لاتاری قبول شدن. به خاطر همین خب این باعث میشه که اون ظرفیت مصاحبه خیلی پایین بیاد. میگه الان داریم با این جریان مبارزه میکنیم، حالا دقیقاً نمیدونم دارن چیکار میکنن، ولی کاری که میکنن دارن تلاش میکنن تغییر ایجاد میکنن، ولی فعلا که خبری نشده. اگر این قضیه ادامه پیدا کنه تا پایان سال، متاسفانه مثل پارسال حتی تمام کیس نامبرها کارنت که پارسال کارنت شد امسال اصلا کارنت نمیشه و کسایی که با کیس نامبر بالا هستن متاسفانه تحت تاثیر منفی قرار میگیرن، ممکن اصلا بهشون وقت مصاحبه نرسه. با این وضعیت فعلا که مشخص نیست، الان منتظر هستیم ببینیم چه اتفاقی میفته. با امید خدا که همه چی خوب پیش میره. So yeah, that's it. Actually, in the end of all of my things, like just be hopeful, everything is gonna be fine. I'm adding this to your statement. So actually, I think I'm done with my question.
Okay, very good.
Thank you. Like you can't believe how much it was helpful. I honestly, I try to share my experience with people, but now I understood I made some mistakes, not very big mistakes, specifically about education. Unfortunately, there are crazy false information out there.
Right.
And people are confused. Even now I understand what's happening. Hopefully I'm going to get back to people whatever I advise to take it back if I say something wrong. But thank you so much for your time.
You're very welcome, and thank you for reaching out and wanting to do this, because I agree, people have got terrible lots of very bad information. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity. Make it count. Get the right information so that you pass. So good luck in your particular case, but also good luck to all of Afghanis and Iranians, around the world. I hope,
thank you. I also thank you in behalf of all Farsi community. I'm just going to translate what you say so we can finish up. دوستان من از طرفش همه فارسی زبان‌ها ازش تشکر کردم که این وقت رو به ما داد، چون متاسفانه اطلاعات خیلی خیلی اشتباهی اون بیرون هست که من خودم بعضی وقتا گیج شدم. متاسفانه شاید یه جای اشتباهی کوچیکی کردم. اگر سوالی ازم پرسیدین که الان سعی می‌کنم سریع بیام توی وبسایت اینو توی کانالم بذارم و اگر جایی رو درست راهنمایی نکردم سریع اصلاح کنم. امیدوارم که موفق باشین. سایمون هم برای همه ما آرزوی موفقیت میکنه. Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you.
Very good.
Yes. I'm done.
I'll stop the recording and we can just quickly finish up.
Yes, of course.
Very good. Thank you so much.